Hello friends, this is the first video I'm making, and my apologies in advance in case I goof up or make some mistakes, because I've never done this before. But I thought of making a series of videos basically talking about some of the films that I love, some of the films that I've watched and I want to share with all of you film lovers. Some of these films are not very common or very popular in that sense, but I think they are a must-watch for any cine lover. And so I thought of making a set of videos talking and discussing about such films. Now today I want to talk about 10 films which are mainly thrillers. It's a broad-based genre, but they can be classified as thrillers, psychological thrillers, film noir, in that broad category. I've picked up 10 of my favorite films. Some very popular and obvious choices might be missing from this list, but as I said, the intention was to talk more about films which have had limited viewings amongst cine lovers, and it's my attempt to talk about such films in greater detail. So here are my top 10. Again, top 10 is slightly misleading perhaps, but here are 10 of my favorite DVDs which broadly fall under the category of thriller films. The first film I'd like to talk about is a classic by Jules Dassin. It's called Refifi. It's a French film, and it's one of the best film noirs ever made. It's one of the best films ever made, according to me. And any serious cinema lover would have heard of this film or seen this film. But for those who haven't, it's a must-watch. It's a movie basically about it's a heist film. It's about this out of work gangster, a gangster who sort of passed his prime, and he comes back to Paris to find out that the equation has changed and he's no longer what he used to be. And there's a new person who's taken over, and you know, even his ex-girlfriend is now with this new guy, and he just is a nobody now. So he decides to pull off this one last heist to show that he still is somebody, and he collects and gathers a group of people who are experts in certain specific jobs needed for this heist, and he decides to rob the most heavily guarded jewelry store in Paris. That's what this movie is about. It is brilliant. Do see it, and in a lot of way, it's a precursor to later heist films like Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, and that entire series of heist movies. This is probably the blueprint. Refifi is the blueprint of such movies. There is this amazing heist sequence which I want to talk about. It's I think a 12 or 13-minute sequence where the actual robbery is taking place. And the most fantastic thing about it is that entire sequence is shot without a single dialogue or a single note of music. There is absolute silence on screen for 12 or 13 minutes as long as the heist takes place, and believe me, you will not realize it. It's so gripping. You will not miss the absence of a spoken word or a musical note in those 12 and a half minutes. It's a fantastic movie. Jules Dassin's Refifi. Do watch it if you can. The next movie is a British movie from the 60s. It's it's directed by Fred Francis, and it's called Paranoic. It's got Oliver Reed in the lead role, and although there are elements of horror very brilliantly used in this movie, but I would still call this movie a psychological thriller. And as expected, there are twists and turns, but overall, it's a fantastic psychological thriller. Oliver Reed puts in a magnificent performance, and it's a story of a brother and sister, and they are united because of the death of their parents, and there is a large inheritance at stake, and there are mind games played. There are visions of a third sibling, another brother who was apparently dead but keeps popping up, and he's seen. It's brilliantly atmospheric, and Oliver Reed puts in a fantastic performance. Do see this, Paranoid. It's a 1963 British movie, relatively lesser known. The next one in my list is yet another British movie with another celebrated star cast of Stuart Granger and Gene Simmons. It's called Footstep in the Fog. Uh, it's a movie from the 50s. I believe it's from 54 or 55, and it tells the story of this British aristocrat who very successfully and cleverly poisons his wife, making it look as a suicide. And the only person who knows about it is his maid, played by Gene Simmons. And it's a story of power struggle where gradually she starts assuming the role of his wife. Not actually saying it, but you know, she starts acting and she starts elevating her status in the house almost to that of his wife. And he decides he can't have that, so he decides to hatch a plan to get rid of her as well, just like he had done with his wife. And it's gripping, it's taut, it's brilliant. Both Gene Simmons and Stuart Granger are absolutely magnificent in this movie. Don't miss it. It's not easily available, the DVD, but do try and get it and watch it. It's fantastic. Footsteps in the Fog. Okay, the next film is the debut movie of the celebrated Christopher Nolan. It's called The Following. I don't know if you can see it or whether the DVD is shining. It's called The Following. It's his first movie, made on a shoestring budget, handheld cameras, all that kind of stuff. It's shot in black and white, by the way. But to me, uh, it's still the best movie Christopher Nolan has made, to me personally. Christopher Nolan is a hugely successful and celebrated director today, but as an earlier fan of his, I feel he's a tad too formulaic and a bit gimmicky at times. My personal opinions, he's a great filmmaker, but The Following is his beginning, and it's superb. It's about this man who randomly picks on strangers on the streets and starts following them to the extent that he's almost a part of their lives unknown to them, and he knows everything that's happening with them in their lives. And what he doesn't know is someone is playing the same game with him, and the consequences it leads to. That forms the crux of The Following. It's it's a movie for about 85 or 90 minutes. It's a 1.5 hour movie at the most. And the amazing thing is, when I first saw this movie, I didn't know who Christopher Nolan was then, or I saw this movie, And for the first 1 hour, I didn't know what was happening in the movie. I was completely confused. I had no clue what was happening. And in the last 20 minutes of the movie, everything falls into place like a jigsaw puzzle. And it's brilliant. And I think this movie sets up what Christopher Nolan was to become since then. And it has all the trappings and trademarks that we today associate with any Christopher Nolan movie. This was the first of the lot. The following. Again, not easily available, but try getting a hold of this DVD and watching it. It's brilliant. There is this French movie by Louis Malle called, in English it's called Elevated to the Gallows. I won't even try pronouncing the French original title because it's way beyond me. It's a film noir. It's from the 50s, and it has all the usual elements of noir, and it's well, just to give you a one-line description of the story, it's about this woman and man who have an affair outside the woman's marriage. She's having an affair with a man who works under her husband, and her lover kills the husband and then unwittingly gets stuck in an elevator in a building that's going to be locked over the weekend. And what follows after that, and how things keep spiraling out of control, is what this movie is about. It's, as I said, it's a classic film noir, so brilliantly made, absolutely brilliantly made. Do watch it. Elevator to the Gallows. I have another movie which I've forgotten to take the DVD out, so I'll excuse me, I'll just get the DVD. I don't know how I forgot taking this one out, because it's my favorite Brian De Palma movie, Sisters. As the title suggests, it's the story of identical twins, conjoined twins, in fact, who were separated at birth, and it's a deranged movie from De Palma. As I like to say, it's deliciously deranged. It's a story about this lady who has an affair with a man, and she brings him home, and her identical sister is there at home as well. And a reporter happens to see this man getting murdered by one of the two sisters, and it's shocking, it's gory in parts, but it's an absolutely fabulous psychological thriller from Brian De Palma. Sisters, don't miss it. The next movie is again by another director duo who I really like, the Coen brothers, and this is their debut movie, Blood Simple. It's I think it's made in the 80s, and the thing about it is it was made at a time when film noir was really not that popular a genre anymore in Hollywood, and kudos to the Coen brothers for reviving the genre. It's a classic film noir based on trying to create the perfect crime, failing miserably. There are all the usual elements of a noir, femme fatale and double crossing and deceit and deceiving partners, and things completely spiraling out of control from what looked like a seemingly simple plot. So it has all the trappings of a classic noir, but it also has something which one associates with the Coen brothers, which is a lot of dark humor. Uh, Although the film is very gory and at times quite brutal, there is an element of dark humor underlying the film all through, which makes it a very special, makes it a quintessential Coen brothers films, you know. And this is their debut, and an absolutely fantastic debut. So, in case you haven't seen it, do see it. Blood Simple by the Coen brothers. The next DVD I want to talk about is this movie called Narrow Margin. No, it's not the 1970s Narrow Margin starring Gene Hackman, which is really the more well-known one and the famous one. This is made in the 50s, and it stars Charles McGraw. It's it's again a classic film noir where there's this cop who's accompanying a gangster's widow from one city to another by train, because she's going to be a police witness, and in the same train are some of the gang members who want her dead. So it's a cat and mouse game where the gang members are hunting for this widow, and it's a cop's job to save her, keep her protected from these men. It's gripping, it's thrilling. It's a movie shot in time, which means the actual duration of the movie is the duration of the events that are taking place. And it is absolutely gripping. It's about 85 minutes long, and you won't know where the time has flown. It's so gripping. Don't miss it. It's hard to get. Narrow Margin. This Narrow Margin. I remember paying a bomb for this movie because I bought it from my DVD library in Calcutta, and the fellow was unwilling to sell it, and I begged, pleaded, and eventually paid quite a hefty sum about 12 or 15 years ago when I did buy this DVD. And it's not easily available, but do try and get it and see it. You won't regret it. It's a brilliant movie, The Narrow Margin. Another film noir. This perhaps is the oldest of all the DVDs that I have shared so far. It's a late 1940s movie called Out of the Past. It stars Robert Mitchum and Kirk Douglas, and it's made at a time when film noir was a really popular genre in Hollywood, and it's got all the trappings of a usual noir. People coming out of your forgotten years, something that you've done and you've moved on in life, and it comes back to haunt you, and the complication that brings along. That's what Out of the Past is about. Fabulous Robert Mitchum. See it just for him. It's a brilliant movie, Out of the Past. The last film is again by a favorite director of mine, unfairly called the Italian Hitchcock. He's not the Italian Hitchcock. He is Dario Argento, and the movie I've chosen is The Cat of Nine Tails. It's I could have chosen any Dario Argento, any film from 3 or 4 of his films that are top favorites of mine. Depends on what day, on what particular mood made me choose any one of those films. I could have chosen any one of those top 3 or 4 films of his. Today I decided to choose Cat of Nine Tails. Classic Dario Argento fabulous soundtrack, usual trappings of his movie, like the gloved hand of the killer being shown from the camera point of view and stuff like that, which most Argento fans will recognize and appreciate. But if you haven't been exposed to the cinema of Dario Argento, I think this is the one to start with. I started with this, and I've never stopped watching his movies once I saw this one. So if you get a chance to get a copy of this DVD, do see it, and I'm sure you'll end up being a fan just like me. So these were some of my favorite DVDs, favorite thriller movies. I hope it's encouraged you to try and get hold of these movies and see them if you haven't already. And I plan to continue with this series of videos. I'll probably tackle my romantic movies, my favorite dramas, some lost and obscure movies, a lot of my favorite Hindi cinema, and some slightly offbeat movies as well, foreign films. I'll basically keep on making videos on the cinema that I like, and I hope that you will like them too. Thank you. Bye bye for now.